Welcome, this is Christopher Massey. For my project on Retrofuturism, I've chosen to discuss Omnilingual, a science fiction novella by H. Beam Piper, published in Astounding science fiction magazine in 1957. Yes, I know, I chose a sci-fi novel, but I chose this for two reasons. First, I love science fiction, and as I'll discuss shortly, I believe science fiction often is the inspiration for current invention. Second, the medium, pulp magazines, especially from the 1930s through the 1950s, was an excellent example of the present day's attention economy. We know today the attention economy is the grabbing of our attention and directing it towards the goals designed for it by technology companies and their technologies. This is accomplished through brain hacking, or the engineering of technology to addict users to check in constantly on their app, smartphone, or social media. Well, back in the 1930s through the 1950s, they didn't have apps, smartphones, or social media. Instead, they had books, newspapers, magazines, and television. Pulp magazines were a cheap and easy method to produce content for readers. Often, these magazines would publish parts of stories or short stories with additional parts or sequels coming out in the next issue. There would also be targeted ads for relevant products among these pages. Readers would spend hours among these pages, just like they do now on their smartphones. Just like today's tech companies, the pulp magazines of yesteryear aimed to keep readers coming back through the production of new and interesting content. Giovanni Ciampaglia, Alessandro Flammini, and Filippo Menczer argue that the continued production of content spurs additional demand, in turn spurring the need for new content, similar to the supply and demand cycle of commerce. I would agree. Looking at the rise of science fiction, you can see where there was a demand for escapism as we moved from the Great Depression into World War II, giving rise to the golden age of science fiction. But what about Omnilingual? Well, as I said, it was published in 1957 in Astounding science fiction magazine, one of the pulp magazines of the age. The story, set in 1996, follows a group of archaeologists as they explore an abandoned city on Mars. The protagonist, Martha Dane, is focused on unlocking the Martian language found in the books and documents they discover. The text makes several predictions about the level of technology available, as well as a nod to the current state of politics. For instance, the text gets a host of things right by transforming technologies of the day into something fantastical. The book was published in 1957, somewhere in the middle of the space race, and manned spaceflight was not in actuality until 1961. Still, the text got it right. A prediction a little closer to the mark is the idea of the character's oxytanks. Astronauts today wear full spacesuits. Part of that suit gear includes an oxygen tank, much like the characters wear in the novel. Additionally, such tools and equipment like the binocular loop and prefabricated buildings are in actuality today. For those few things that the text got right, it got a lot wrong. Its idea of spaceflight, for instance. Sure, we had spaceflight, but nowhere near to the level at which it is described and assumed in the text. As to the current state of the world, the text suggests that the world of 1996 would be one in which there is one big federation where all people and nations are working together for the greater good. As far as I know, that hasn't happened yet, nor have we found life on Mars or in outer space. What do these predictions mean? Well, I think these predictions of science fiction spurred the imagination of inventors and engineers and made many of these dreams a reality. Take spaceships, for instance. The idea was initially presented as long ago as the 1880s, and in the 1960s, we had spaceflight. Finally, I think someday we may get a modified version of some of the ideas presented in Omnilingual. I mean, just because a prediction was wrong doesn't mean it will be forever. Think about it. We now have a United States Space Force. How long until we have a Terran Federation? Or spaceships as described in some science fiction texts? Perhaps one day we will get to Mars. And who knows? Maybe there will be cities under all that sand.